Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. I'm with Asha today, and I'm super excited to hear about relocating to Mexico. And I know many of us have been, whether we're in our 20s, and I know I'm a little bit older than that, but I think the pandemic really made us stop and rethink this crazy lifestyle that we have, especially here in the United States, and especially in places like Los Angeles, where we're just like trying to scramble. Most of ours aren't, we're spending way too much time just trying to pay our bills. So, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today.
So, tell me when you started your business. Tell me about your business.
Sure, absolutely. So first I'll introduce myself. My name is Asha Farah. And as I said, I'm thrilled to be here today to talk a little bit about myself and of course my relocation business in Mexico. So I currently live in beautiful Santiago de Querétaro, Mexico. This is a kind of under the radar location. Not many people tend to talk about it a lot, but it's extremely beautiful. That's what attracted me to this area. Kind of tons to do. There's a building or budding expat community, which is really nice. I really love interacting with the natives here. They've been extremely friendly and welcoming to me. That's always a question that's asked, so I kind of just answer the elephant in the room. But I really love living here. So to go back a little bit further, I first traveled to Mexico in I think 2007.
Hmm.
And initially, I kind of went on like a spring break trip, as you mentioned, that kind of 20 something trip.
Yeah.
And Mexico showed me the wow factor, okay? It wasn't just like the beaches and the parties. It was like, wow, there's a lot of culture here. There's a lot that I'm interested in. So it was a brief trip, but it always was in the back of my head like, that was a really intriguing country and culture. And from there, I started to continue to put Mexico on my travel board. So each time I went back to Mexico, I visited a different state or I visited a different city to see how I felt as I was exploring. So I ended up exploring Mexico for 15 years. I traveled through about a third of the country.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I knew right away after I got myself together that it would be the first country that I would relocate to because I had so much experience there. So that's initially what brought me to Mexico. And because of that experience, and when trying to relocate, I noticed there was not a lot of logistical support when it
Yeah.
comes to relocating. Okay. A lot of people tend to talk about the great side of relocating. So they show you the beach photos. They show
Yeah.
and it's like, well, that's all great. The number one question is, how did you do it, right? How did you
Right.
get the visa? How did you choose the right location? What is the currency? You know, with everything going on in the world, inflation has hit globally. A lot of people think of it as like a US thing. No, inflation has hit globally. So I noticed there really was not a breakdown or a guide that really supported people in relocating. Okay, so that's where my company, Mexpat Dreamers, comes into place. For me, my goal and mission is to help aspiring expats move to Mexico with ease. So, what I say is, I help aspiring expats with logistical support, and we build an intentional life for you together. And so, when I say logistical support, what I mean by that is we talk about the pros and cons of each location and we select the right location for you based on your lifestyle preferences. So we want to look to see what do you like to do and what can you carry over to your new location. Okay. So do you like to bowl? Do you like to run? We kind of build those
Yeah.
things in because you don't want to move and then become unhappy. You know,
No,
you
no,
bring
right.
those same
Yeah.
attitudes that you had in the States, unfortunately, to your next country. We talk about currency and we talk about how to really move with the currency favorably, okay? Because Mexico is still a cash culture. So you're going to be going to the ATM more frequently than you're used to.
Yeah.
So we're talking about, hey, with a floating currency, and that's what Mexico has. They have a floating currency, meaning that their currency can be one US dollar equals 20 Mexican pesos today. And then tomorrow it could be one US dollar equals 19 Mexican pesos. So you want to be strategic when you go to the ATM, okay? Also, I help people obtain residency. We go over the requirements. So those are the kind of logistical things that my company, Mexpat Dreamers, offers to my clients.
Yeah, and especially because Mexico, when I look at it on a map, it's big. It's a large
I'm
country.
glad you said that
And I
because
mean, just the topography. I mean, there's beaches like you mentioned, but I'm sure there's mountains and other areas there in the middle. I mean, so
so I'm glad you said that because I actually live in a mountain area. I live in central Mexico. And so
okay.
there's not a beach by me, but I didn't want a beach because there are pros and cons of living near the beaches. And for me, the cons outweigh the pros for my lifestyle. There are many other people who will select beaches. But I want to reiterate, Mexico is a huge country. It has 32 states, okay? So a lot of people, when they think about Mexico, think about Cabo, you think about Cancun, maybe even Mexico City, but I think that's the extent of
Yeah.
people's Mexico knowledge. And there's so much more to it. And so I really introduce my clients to the so much more element.
Yeah, and if they're thinking about relocating, I would think if I was considering, I'd want to go visit some of these places for a little while. How do you work
Yeah, I
people through
think
that?
that's really smart. So that's really what I recommend to my clients. Initially, I work with my clients to kind of give them just a background about Mexico because, again,
Yeah.
people don't really have the knowledge. And so I explain to them what their options are. And then we kind of whittle it down based on lifestyle preferences. Again, some people are digital workers, they're entrepreneurs. So maybe Wi Fi is at the top of your list. Maybe safety is at the top of your list for many of us, okay?
Yeah.
So we kind of go through what I consider lifestyle considerations, and I have a list of them that I go through with each client. Once we've made maybe like a top two or top three list of that location area for you in Mexico, I recommend coming to see it because it's going to be different when you arrive. And for my clients who are interested in the area that I'm in or a nearby location called San Miguel de Allende, I offer them relocation tours.
Oh,
And
nice.
on these, yeah, because I think it's important to see a place before you move. And not only that, especially if you haven't spent extensive time in a country, it's different being a resident than a vacationer. I always stress that. A vacationer, everything seems very glossy. Everything seems so fun. You can't find one wrong thing with a place. But it's when you become a resident that you see everything, pros and cons. So on the relocation tours, I do things like I show people supermarkets, I take people to the ATMs, we do neighborhood tours. We also look at current apartment rentals on the market. So I give you a realistic picture of what your life could actually be like. And I think that's important.
Yeah, that's really important. And I don't think many people think about all those steps. They just get
No.
excited about, you know what, I'm done with like LA or New York City or wherever,
Yeah,
and they just want to hop on the plane and do it. But
yeah,
talk about the weather in Mexico, because I imagine there's different climates too, just in a country of this size.
absolutely. So I'm originally from New York City, born and raised. So I grew up in the cold.
Yeah.
It felt like it was always cold. And then for college, I went to college in Washington, D.C. So I really spent a lot of my life on the East Coast cold.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that I chose the location that I chose is because the weather is temperate year round. So that felt perfect for me. And when I say temperate year round, I'm talking mid 70s.
Oh,
So that
wow.
for me feels perfect. There is a brief 3 month summer, but it doesn't coincide with the summer in the States. We're actually at the end of our summer now. So the summer here is March, like March, April, June.
Oh,
March,
okay.
April, May. Um, and so during the summer, it can be much hotter. It can be like 85. And another thing that stands out to me weather-wise, it's really sunny almost every day here. So I tell my clients, if you struggle with any mental health, if you struggle with depression, this is something that to me, I would say, I put it in the pro list because
Yeah.
it's nothing like waking up to the sun every day. So that's this area, that's central Mexico. It tends to be very sunny and the weather is temperate. But Mexico is a large country, so the weather varies. If you would like to live in a colder climate, you have places like Chiapas. A lot of people who crave the cold weather, they tend to move to that area. So that's a recommendation that I make. Believe it or not, it does snow in Mexico.
See? See, I think for a lot of us, our knowledge is just, we have
Limited, yeah.
yeah, it's limited.
It's limited. So yeah, a lot of people are surprised that, in the north they do get snow. So there is a myriad of weather preferences that you may want or have, and I do believe that Mexico can satisfy them.
Yeah. Talk about, do you have a car living in Mexico? Do you recommend? Yeah,
That's
probably
a
for
really great question. For my clients, I don't recommend having a car the first year. Reason being, this is a brand new experience. You've packed up your whole life. You've said goodbye to your friends and family.
Yeah.
You relocated to a new area where you're speaking maybe a new language, you're eating new foods. Why would you add something like a vehicle? So I typically tell my clients public transportation is good here. And when I say public transportation, I want to be clear. I'm more so talking about ride share. So we're
Oh,
talking
okay.
about Uber. Where in the States they call it Lyft, but here it's called Didi. So we have both Uber and Didi. I recommend using those because for me, they're the same price that I used to pay to ride the train in both New York and DC. You pay about $3 per ride.
Oh,
So I
wow.
don't
Yeah.
feel that it's necessary to have a car. I think it's important the first year to make sure that the area is a good fit, because the first year I tell my clients it's like dating. You're trying on this new location. At the beginning when you're dating, you don't see anything wrong with the guy you're seeing or the girl you're seeing. And then like 6 months later, they're starting to get on your nerves.
Right, right, exactly. And maybe how far
Yes.
you are or the lack of
So until
activities
right.
or
So until you make that commitment of saying this is where I want to stay, I really like this area, then if you feel like a car is necessary, because maybe in some areas it may be, if you want to live further out in the suburbs, just like in the States, Uber is not going to be as available or it may take much longer. So I say try on your area first before you introduce a vehicle.
yeah. So safety, I know we all see all these crazy stories about Mexico and the safety, even though equally every day in the United States we have bad things
Yeah.
happen. So,
Yeah, so that's really the elephant in the room, right? Safety in Mexico. When you hear Mexico, you think unsafe, unfortunately. I'm very transparent with people. As I said, I've traveled through a third of Mexico as a Black American woman, no less.
yeah.
I have not had any issues whatsoever. I haven't had a moment where I felt like this feels sketchy. Now, this is my personal experience. What I will also say is this: the city I live in is one of the safest cities in Mexico. So
Wow.
again, let's go back to when we talked about how large Mexico is. We said Mexico has 32 states. Let's compare it to America. Many states there as well where there are issues, many cities there where there are issues, many areas and many cities that you wouldn't recommend a friend or a loved one going maybe in the evening, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
Similarly, there are issues here. I would say there are regional issues. That's how I describe it to my clients. There are regional issues. A lot of those issues are in areas that expats would never be found in
Right.
because these are areas that are local areas where you need fluent Spanish.
Yeah, yeah.
Where expat, this is not a tourist attraction. These are people trying to figure out everyday life. So these are not areas that you would travel to. Also, issues tend to happen in the border towns.
Okay.
Border towns are not expat towns. So as I mentioned, I live in central Mexico. A lot of people, I'll give you an example, live in places by the beach like Playa del Carmen, Puerto Vallarta, big cities like Mexico City. Now, when you compare Mexico City population wise to New York City, do things happen in New York City?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
So are things going to happen in Mexico City? Absolutely. But as an overall, Mexico is a safe country. And I want to say that because I notice when I interact with a lot of the natives, they unfortunately feel so hurt that that's the impression that people have about. They say, hey, maybe our government is not the greatest. Guess what? Maybe the government is not the greatest in the country you're from, but that's not a reflection of all of the people. So I really want to stress that Mexico is safe. I think that if you're prioritizing safety, if you're considering moving to Mexico, prioritize the safer areas. Merida, Santiago de Querétaro, where I live, prioritize the safe cities and you'll be fine.
Right. And I think too, like just like here in the United States, it's being, it's just being situationally aware. Like you said, we're not going to send our loved ones to some kind of sketchy area and just keep our wits about us. But
Keep your wits about you. Be smart. Do your research. Work with someone who is on the ground. I always recommend that, even if not me, work with someone who has spent extensive time in that country. Sometimes groups online can be biased, but when you're speaking to someone who is actually there, who is living there, and when I mean actually there, I don't mean like living there for 3 months and then going to another country. I mean someone who grocery shops, someone who rents from people here. Like I rent local. So I have an extreme connection to the natives here. So that's really important, to speak to people who are on the ground and can give you firsthand experiences.
Yeah. Do you have tips besides your company for meeting these locals? Are there groups or places to, once you move, sometimes that loneliness sets in too of making new
Yes,
friends and
absolutely. I think number one, that's another one of those considerations that I walk through with my clients. How important is expat community for you? Or how important is a community for you? There are some people, maybe you're moving with your husband, your children, your grandchildren, whatever the case may be. So you feel like, okay, we're here, it's a cocoon. An expat community or community may not be as important. But a lot of my clients that I work with are over 40. Okay. Like
mm,
I said, they may be empty nesters. Okay, so they're starting a new chapter. I think you touched on this. COVID gave us an opportunity to sit back and think,
yeah,
what do I want out of my life? And a lot of people are relocating after coming to an awareness that I want something different. I want to challenge myself. I want to interact with other people that don't look like me.
right.
Okay. So if that's important to you, there are absolutely social media groups, Facebook groups of those local cities that I recommend joining immediately if you're considering that. And then when you come out here, be very open. Show up to the community events. There are frequently community events on weekends, during the weekdays, trivia nights, things like that.
Yeah, that sounds
So
nice.
you don't feel lonely. And I see posts all the time. I'm a tennis fan. People say, hey, anybody play tennis? So people do post in the community groups frequently, and there are get togethers frequently. In fact, I'm going to a live music event of an expat tomorrow who is an artist. So there are frequently things going on.
Yeah, those are great ideas. Yeah, I
And
love
I
that.
will say Mexico is big on arts and culture. If you love live music, I'm telling you, there is always a live music event.
Yeah, I think Mexico has so much to offer as far as like
So
cheap
much.
foods and fresh foods, and I'm sure you're in an area where your ability to go to like local farmers and different food.
Yeah.
There's literally food deserts, as we know in the United States. I was just talking to someone yesterday where there's nothing grown that's fresh.
The food is 100% an upgrade in my life. I, I can confidently say that.
Yeah, because I'm a foodie. I love to eat. So
Oh, well, you would love Mexico because each state, they take pride in, their state being like the reigning champion of mole or a different, Mexican option. So you would love it here.
is
Yeah.
language an issue for people, for expats? Is that
That's
something?
another great question. The language can surely be a barrier or a challenge or an opportunity. It depends on how you look at things, right? For
Yeah.
me, I looked at it as an opportunity because I hate so much that we only know English in the States. I feel like that is not something that I'm proud of. So for me, I looked at it as an opportunity to live abroad somewhere else and learn another language. But for other people, it could be more of a challenge. And here are some recommendations. For me, in preparation for my move, I actually took a free class at a local university.
Oh,
Believe it or not, universities have like free life learning courses, so they're not associated with like maybe like the college level. So I took an introductory Spanish class,
oh,
okay,
nice.
in
Wow.
preparation. Yeah, because I knew that I wanted to move to a city that challenged me in that way, because I wanted my time here to create growth for me. So it
Right.
depends on what you're looking for. Are there cities here where you can get by not knowing the language? Absolutely. But then they come at a cost, because if you're going to live in a city that is English speaking, it's not going to be as affordable as maybe a city that speaks primarily Spanish. But I always recommend my clients learn basic Spanish because it's a respect for the culture. You
Yeah.
know, when you're moving somewhere else, you want to show, I respect you. I'm not coming here for any other reason other than to enjoy the culture. So even learning the basics of good morning, good afternoon, where's the bathroom is very important.
Yeah, I agree. Even as a traveler, I think it's super
Oh
important.
my
If
gosh.
you're
Yeah.
traveling to someone, so to another country, it's
Yeah.
a definite sign of respect. I came to visit your country and at least trying, even if you fumble, I mean, I
It's
don't,
okay. They're very
yeah,
kind to you if you make a mistake, you know. Don't take yourself so serious.
right? Yeah, exactly. But it also shows you're not expecting that expectation that I'm from the United States and everyone should do what I do. Because
Yes.
no, yeah,
April, I'm so glad you said that because, of course, there are people who do come down here with that attitude, and it is something that is observed by the natives here, you know, and it doesn't feel so good. It
right.
doesn't feel so good because it's already you're moving to a new location. You want to show that we respect you. And I think that's okay. That's not a bad thing. No one is saying you have to become fluent overnight. But when you see people, you can accommodate the culture by saying good morning, good afternoon, in Spanish, of course.
Right, yeah, in Spanish, and also it opened that door to making a friendship or making a connection to someone that this is their home. This is where
Yep.
their generations and the history and the culture and, trying the new foods or learning something. I
Yeah,
think it'll just broaden, make your experience even better. I mean, otherwise
I think so too.
you're just a little cocoon, like plunked
Hmm.
there. I don't know.
I agree with you. And one thing that you'll find when you get out here are the natives are very friendly. They want to speak to you. You know, they don't have a bias against anyone moving here. They want to speak to you. When I'm out and about, people frequently speak to me. People are frequently trying to help me. And it's funny because when they notice that I know some Spanish, they're always like, oh, wow, you know, that really extends the conversation further. That may then lead to an invite somewhere. Hey, you know, I'm doing this, or I have a friend who plays in a band. You should come check us out. And you were just asking about, you know, socially or how do
Yeah.
you, that's how.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's just the first door.
That's
Yeah,
the opening of the door. Yeah.
yeah. So how do you feel about the cost of living in Mexico versus the United States? Because as you said, everywhere it's just getting more expensive.
Yeah. So obviously that's a good question. I mean, if we're being honest, obviously the cost of living overall in Mexico is going to be cheaper, period. Now, let's talk about what has happened since I feel like COVID. Since COVID, I've seen a lot of increases, April. I'll be honest with you.
Oh,
And where I've seen the most increases in apartment rentals. I've seen them in the transportation, like we talked about the shared
yeah.
transportation with Uber. I've seen it in the cost of food. I've seen it in going out. And that's something that always shocks clients because I think when we're from the United States, a lot of us, we're not global. We really see things from a myopic perspective, right? We only
Yeah.
see things here. So it's like when we hear inflation, it's like, oh my God, gas in the States or eggs in the States, you know?
Yeah, yeah. True.
That's all we think about, but we don't think about how, you know, that pertains to other global other countries globally. And Mexico was a country that was affected. And so things have increased. There are certain areas or cities that are more expensive or can be on par with the states now. You know,
Oh,
they're
wow.
not going to be on par with Los Angeles or New York, but they're going to be on par with some areas in the states. Yeah.
Right, right.
Because one thing I want to touch on, April, is that we have a responsibility when we become expats. When you become expats, especially in a country like Mexico, you're going to rise the cost of living. And people simply say, how can I rise the cost of living just by showing up? Let me tell you how. Because if you're coming from DC like myself, where a one bedroom is going for 1,700, and you come out here and you see a one bedroom, maybe 700,
Yeah.
you're like, wow, that
Yeah.
is amazing. I will take two of those, you know, you're
Right.
so excited. But what you don't realize is that that $700 price is pushing a native out of that area. You know, so you have people from other countries, they're able to pay cash for homes. They flip them maybe into Airbnbs or they rent them out. And so they rise the prices. You come down here as an American and you hear this, what sounds such a cheap price, and you're like, yes, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So, and it, you know, it's not necessarily your fault, but you want to become an educated expat. That's something that I try to do with my clients. I educate my clients because we want to be responsible expats. We definitely don't want to go into countries and misplace natives. We definitely don't want to do that. We want to support them. And so ways that you can support them are you can rent local. You can, don't rent from realty companies if you don't have to, because 9 times out of 10, they're owned by people from different countries, okay? So I try to rent, I don't try to, I rent local, meaning I rent directly from someone who is from this area. So the money is going into their pockets monthly.
Right.
I
And that is,
shop local. I
yeah, that
eat
is,
local.
yeah, that's an excellent point because you're right. There are a lot of these buildings or homes that are actually owned by people
In Europe, in
in
Canada, in the
Europe. Yeah,
States. Yeah,
exactly. So then the money isn't helping the family that needs it. Or
no,
same with shopping. If you're shopping on Amazon, you're not keeping the money locally in the families
yeah,
that need it, that need
yeah,
your support.
yeah.
So what about working? Are there, do you have suggestions if someone wanted to work in communities and just, because some people they don't need to work, but it's that again that it gives you a connection. It gives you a sense of worth. I mean, a lot of people they quit working full time and they don't know what to do with themselves, honestly. So
Yes, agreed. So traditional work in terms of if you have a need for income, no, I don't recommend a country like Mexico because obviously number one, first priority is going to go to natives for work. And then number two, you need a work visa. So there are a few things in place. So I definitely don't recommend it as so to come down here and look for a job. Most people have their own businesses. Most people work remote. But now to your point of maybe you're retired and you're coming down here, but you don't want to sit home 5 days a week. Absolutely. There are so many opportunities. There are needs for people in the classroom teaching English. There are needs for you teaching English virtually. There are definitely needs for women and children volunteering. Mexicans really do love animals. So if you are an animal lover, there is definitely a need for you. So there is a definite need. If you have a digital skill, like you're good with technology, that's really good. Restaurants can use you, maybe changing their menus over from like the paper version of the
yeah,
menus to digital, helping with website needs. I've seen that. So yeah, there's definitely room for you here.
yeah.
You will not be bored.
Right. So how long have you actually lived there? I think you touched on it at the beginning, but
Yes, so initially I moved here at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm trying to think now. It feels like the
yeah,
pandemic has
right.
taken like 10 years off of our lives.
Yeah, no, I always get confused when it's like this hole. It's like I've lost track of time.
It's like, okay, when was it? But yes, I moved at the beginning of the pandemic. So I think top of 21 or end of 2020. Because for me, what was really important was I wanted to make sure I paid off all of my debt and I moved out here debt free.
Oh,
So
nice.
I worked on that for quite some time before I made the official move.
And you came all by yourself, not knowing
No,
anyone.
I came with my spouse. We came together.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's
Yes.
good. Yeah.
Yes, it's just so we came together because we've traveled a lot in the world and we both knew this would be our first place because really it's nothing like Mexico. I mean, I know a lot of people get different impressions about Mexico, but the beauty, the culture, the history is I'm still exploring as we speak. And it's just every time I go somewhere new, I'm like, wow. I'm
Yeah.
totally still wowed by this country.
Yeah, I agree. Though I keep researching a little bit. I mean, just the history, there's architectural, there's ancient ruins that they're
Yeah,
still finding things,
yeah.
it's amazing how deep the culture goes.
The culture goes so deep. And as I said, you learn about the culture when you go from state to state. There's different culture that you learn about. There are ruins that you never knew existed. Maybe there's smaller ruins. Even in the city I live in, Santiago de Querétaro, we have a ruin in the city. I think that's so cool.
Yeah, that is so cool.
It's so
Yeah,
cool. So,
that's
yeah, it's
amazing.
just so much here. And I absolutely love it. I absolutely recommend it to people.
So how do people reach out to you to have them help you consider moving to Mexico?
Absolutely. So they can reach out through my website. My website is called mexpatdreamers.com. I'm sure April will put it in,
Yep.
the chat. You can reach out to me there. I also have my Instagram, and my Instagram page is called Mexpat Dreamers, same name. I pretty much chronicle my life here in Mexico. I offer tips. I share the things that I do, both culturally and for fun. So people get kind of an inside, peek into life because sometimes people do wonder, like, what is life as an expat for real? Are you bored? Can you do
Yeah.
things? And so I show different things that I do. I've gone to like a football match, which is like soccer here. It's my first soccer match, and I was like, whoa, this was fun. Like, I would
Yeah.
totally do this again. So I chronicle those type of experiences.
Oh, I think that's fabulous. I love Instagram for that because you can see.
Yeah, I love it too. So if any of your audience is interested, I'd love to share my experiences with them and help them get started on the relocation journey.
Great. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of this. It sounds fabulous. And I hope people will reach out to you. I know a lot of people are at a point in their life where they're looking for something different. And I think Mexico has much more to offer than we give credit for.
I agree, and I don't want people to be intimidated by the expat process. Like I said, I want to help you move to Mexico with ease, so definitely reach out if you're interested.
So it's mexpatdreamers.com, correct?
Correct.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.